Okay, Christopher Hill, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thanks, Ted. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And again, I can hear an accent. Where is your accent from? Let's start with that.
Well, my accent is a bit of a mix. Um, I've lived in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and England. Um, so yeah, it's very hard to detect exactly where I'm from, but the answer to that is New Zealand, and that's where I'm currently based.
Okay, so that's where that's where you're at right now. You're in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast, and I've been just looking at based on what the Kelly. I'm assuming that there's someone who works with you that kind of set this up for you.
Yeah.
Just gave just a brief background of kind of what it is that what you've been doing for it seems like quite some time now. And I did have a quick look at your website, and I would love to hear all about that. And really what it is, according to the website, is luxury family volunteer vacations. And you kind of spearhead that and give people some, incredible journeys and stories. But it's kind of all based, purpose driven, people helping people, but mixed with a little bit of fun and vacation too. So, I guess I would like to start about just a little bit about you too. So, it sounds like you from all over the place. Where were you born originally?
I was born here in New Zealand, but at the age of 12, moved to Australia for 6 years. And so that was all of my high schooling was done in Australia. And obviously, I don't know how much you know about Aussies, but they love to tease, and so I had to lose my accent pretty quickly if I was ever going to get away from being basically pinned up against the wall and made to say "fish and chips" and 66, which are the vowel sounds that New Zealanders are distinctive for. So it was not unpleasant, but it got a bit tiresome having to do it all the time. So yeah, I fairly quickly lost that accent, but it's more or less come back.
Yeah. And then you've kind of moved all over the place. And I will say you're the fourth person from Australia that's been on the podcast now. So I feel like I'm hitting that continent and that area of the world pretty well. So that's great to see. And you moved around quite a bit when you were young. Kind of jumping back and forth. What causes that? I know a lot of times here in the United States, where I'm from, a lot of times that's more of like a military family. Was that something with your background there, or was it just travel and seeing the world?
Well, at the age of 12, not a military background, but just my dad did get a promotion to move to Australia within the same company that he was working for. And so, as I said, I did all my high schooling there and then moved back to New Zealand when I was 18 with the rest of the family. And I did college in New Zealand. I did a law degree and a business degree. And at that point was all set to become a lawyer once I sort of entered into my final year of college. But something intervened in that I won a scholarship from a British investment bank, and that culminated in me ended up getting a job with them and moving to London, and which I did at that point for 6 years.
Wow.
And then I spent a year in Canada, 6 years into working in London. And then I spent 2 years traveling the world, and then another 10 years in London. And then I've been back here in New Zealand for about the last 9 years.
Wow. So you said investment banking?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I was working for Barclays Bank, which is a British bank, in their investment banking division, which at that time was called BZW. It actually doesn't even exist anymore, but yeah, that was what it was called then.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's quite a jump, I would say, from lawyer, investment banking, traveling the world, international, banking and business guy to a world of travel. What kind of sparked
Mm,
the travel bug within you?
yeah, yeah, great question, Tay. Funny, when I agreed to work for a law firm, I had spent the summer working there and had really enjoyed it actually, and so I was quite happy to, as I say, become a lawyer. But I also wanted to travel, and so got them to agree that I could delay my start date for about 9 months and travel the world. And my thinking at the time was, I'll get travel out of my system and see the world, get out of my
Yeah,
system, and then settle down and become a lawyer. But really, all it did was just spur the travel bug in me even more, and realize that the more you see, the more there is to see, and that really laid the foundation for a great passion for travel. And and then and then well, actually no, my first and my first roommates in London was a South African guy and an English guy, and the English guy moved to South Africa, and and so that happened while we were roommates, and then if we fast forward 6 years really into living in London, he ended up becoming a tour guide down in South Africa and invited me on a trip down there with him, and I said, yeah, sure, why not?
yeah. Why
And
not?
so went down. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And on that trip, we were sort of tossing around some different ideas of something that I could do in sort of the next phase of my career that was travel related. And for instance, one idea that came up was which was speaking to another passion of mine, which is photography, and
Mhm.
perhaps setting up a trip or trips that focused on photography, specialized in helping people get the perfect image whilst on their vacation.
Yeah,
And I like the sound of it, but that sort of thing was a bit done and dusted already. And so another idea came to my mind of putting together trips that included an element of service and giving back to the destination. And my friend said, well, actually, I've got a good relationship with the guy who runs Habitat for Humanity, which is
hmm
a house building charity here in Cape Town. And he said, would you like me to see if they've got a build happening at the moment, or at the time that we're going to get back to Cape Town?
yeah,
And I said, yeah, that'd be great. And so he got in touch with them, and as luck or providence would have it, they did have a build at that time. So I was able to get involved with that, and it really added two sort of dimensions to travel for me, which were transformational. One, in contrast to all the travel I'd done leading up to that, in building this house alongside the family, I actually, got to engage with the local people and hear their stories and swap laughs and actually just get a real sort of immersion into their way of life and culture. And then secondly, it just felt great to make a difference in their lives and be a part of providing a decent place for them to live. And
yeah,
so I got thinking, well, I've learned some good business skills. Why don't I put them into something I find a bit more meaningful and fulfilling, and make it easy for others to have similar experiences to what I've just had? And so that
yeah.
was really the birthing of what became Hands Up Holidays. And at that point, so that was in 2002, and I decided at that point to leave my job and actually do some more study and take a year out. And that was when I spent that year in Vancouver in Canada. And it's kind of like a sabbatical year really for me. And this idea really took root, and I decided that yes, this is what I want to do next. And so that was when I ended up spending those next 2 years traveling the world and building relationships with different travel communities, and then moved back to London in 2006 to launch Hands Up Holidays.
Yeah. So you've been doing this for quite some time.
Yeah. We've been live for nearly 20 years now.
Yeah, that's great. And obviously travel. I mean, that's something a lot of people like to travel. Service, was service always something that was on your heart, or was it just something that just kind of was, hey, this is available in South Africa, and then you did it and fell in love with it then? Or was it something that you've always kind of tried to do to kind of help people out and do more humanitarian type service?
Yeah, it's more the latter. That not in terms of going and doing Peace Corps or anything like that, but certainly it's been part of my life to help in small ways when possible. Sort of mostly sort of local community focused areas.
Yeah. Another thing I would just like to say, Habitat for Humanity, that's actually a big thing here in the U.S. I didn't realize that was an international organization. I thought it was just something local to the U.S., but that's good to know.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely is international and does amazing work.
Yeah,
but its origins are in the U.S. Yeah,
and just kind of thinking, like you were saying, I can imagine, you go to a new place on travel and you interact, but it's not necessarily, you're not immersing yourself into it. I can imagine, when you're working alongside people and you're actually doing pretty hard work, you're building a house, a lot of communication. Maybe you speak the language, but maybe not the, all the ins and outs of the local stuff. But I can imagine that would really, help the dynamic there, I guess. And to, like you said, really immerse yourself if you're trying to do hard things with a completely different culture and blend together. But, to come up with something and have a final outcome that's, that someone's going to live in, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a great way to bond together. Absolutely. With everyone, united in the one purpose.
Yeah. And I think that, I say that a lot, right? I mean, even just in life, you kind of build the best bonds with people when you do hard things together, and this is no exception. Plus, you kind of have language barriers and just culture differences. I think that would make quite a big difference for sure. I did see something on your website. It said impact destinations. Is that something that is it still around? Is it tied? Is that totally separate from Hands Up Holidays?
Yeah, it's absolutely still around, and it's part of Hands Up Holidays. Well, in the sense that I created both of them, but they're conceptually similar in terms of the underlying foundation of trips that give back and make a difference. But there are some crucial differences as well. First and foremost, on a Hands Up Holidays trip, you do physically roll up your sleeves and wheel a hammer, or grab a paintbrush and spend whatever it is, 3 to 4 days actually physically helping on a project. Or that could, it certainly could be that building project. It could also be being a reading partner at a literacy project at a school, or it could be helping at a wildlife conservation center. But whatever way it is, you as the traveler physically dedicating some time to making that difference yourself, albeit part of a team and under supervision, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
In contrast, the idea behind impact destinations is that it's the traveler's philanthropic donation which will enable the experts to do what they do best, and then at the same time unlock a unique experience for the traveler. So, for example, say on a trip to Indonesia, where there are orangutans that are facing habitat loss due to palm oil production, you can fund the rescue of an orangutan family facing this habitat loss and their relocation to a protected reserve. And then in return for that, you get to go into a exclusive tract of rainforest with expert guides and track the orangutans and other wildlife such as sun bears in the wild. So that's the idea behind that. Another quick example would be something which is not actually live yet. So you're getting a sort of a sneak preview is in some destinations in Asia, we're being able to offer the opportunity to fund a raid on essentially on a brothel, which is running underage sex trafficked young women. And so you fund that raid and enable the rescue of these young girls. And in exchange, in return for that, you get to speak with the police and undercover people that actually participated in the raid and hear about their experience.
Wow, that's actually pretty fantastic. And something you might not know about me, but I'm a retired police officer and a detective. So I do have some friends, and I have some friends that have traveled the world doing that type of work with like the International Justice Mission. And they do great work around the world. That's a really interesting idea to kind of tie that in and really have a hand in funding some of those operations, because they're just, they're nonprofit organizations and they're doing amazing work, but it's not cheap. So
exactly.
To be able to kind of put yourself into that situation and know that you're making a difference and seeing it firsthand, that is really interesting. I can see that. I can see some people being very interested in that. Wow. Yeah. And then, so what's like the vacation part of it? So obviously you're doing great. You're doing great work. You're out and you're doing all of this, either, feeding people, building homes, saving animals, children. But, it's mixed in with vacation. So what does the vacation part of that look like? That, I'm assuming it's all built in and scheduled for both experiences.
Yeah, it is, Tay. And I should add that every trip is customized, fully tailored for the traveler, and so that could be an individual, it could be a couple, it could be a family or a group of friends, whatever the case may be. Every trip is customized for them, and so the idea is still that for the majority of our clients, the idea is to give people a taste of giving back. And so it is still going to be a vacation for them, but they can choose to spend as many days as they want. Absolutely. But so typically it's, 2 to 3 days out of a 7 or 8 day itinerary is the standard. And as I say, the idea is to give you, the experience really, like I mentioned, for me on that, the house building project that I did in South Africa, that was where the magic happened for me. And just it was 4 days I spent there, but that was just even in those 4 days was transformational for me. And so our model is one that I describe with Hands Up Holidays as philanthropy volunteering. And what I mean by that is that the benefit that you bring is the funds to pay for local experts, employ them to do most of the work, and pay for the materials, the concrete and the wood and everything else that's required.
Right.
And then the benefit that you get is that interaction and engagement with the local people, and the feeling of satisfaction of putting the finishing touches on it and handing it over to the recipients. And so it's still a vacation, and we've pitched it at the luxury level to make this giving back component accessible for people who don't want to have to rough it. I mean, there are plenty of organizations where you can give back and the accommodation is more modest and basic, which is completely fine. But we're just in our initial market research noticed that there was a barrier for some people who said, I do want to help, but I am a bit deterred by sleeping on the floor. So
Right.
we've pitched it at the level that the people who have the means to make a difference in this way would also feel comfortable.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, just kind of give a little bit of taste. Do you find that a lot of people that do this are very service-oriented people? Kind of a similar question that I asked you, or do you think that a lot of people come on it, get the taste, and then it sparks, something when they go back home and they become, more philanthropic that way?
Yeah, well, I think there's one thing I should say is that right from when we launched in 2006, even launched in the UK, it was Americans that were booking with us, and that's continued right through to today. Americans make up 90+% of our clients, and I think it's in your DNA actually to want to give back and serve, and so so in terms of looking at our clients, there's a strong number that it's already part of what they do. But they also want to experience it in a foreign context as well. And that was certainly speaking to my own experiences also. But, it translates over to our clients. And then we do also get people who haven't really been exposed to it before, but maybe their motivation is something like, and particularly in the family context, it's things like wanting their kids to appreciate how fortunate they are, and this is a way of doing that, and then so that they may not have that background of giving back, but they go into it with that lens, and then do get inspired to want to make this an ongoing thing, either in their vacations or back at home.
Yeah. That's I could see that for sure. Here in the United States, there's a lot of opportunity to help, the less fortunate. You can go to a soup kitchen and you can have your kids help you, and, you can serve people and, spend a couple hours doing that. But I think the level of poverty that they would see in that, although those people are in need, third world countries, it's a completely different thing. That I think it separates and go, oh, wow. I think it gives a better respect of kind of what we have here in America. I can see that for sure, especially the kids, I think would be very impacted by seeing something outside of the US, because it's quite different.
That's a great point. Yeah. It is sort of next level.
Yeah. And I jotted down something when I saw it on your website, but it's a great, just 3 words to kind of sum up what it is that you do, right? Explore, enjoy, enrich.
Okay.
That seems, like you're saying, you kind of do quite a bit. You're exploring a lot, but it really brings a lot of enjoyment and, to the family and everybody that's doing it. But also I would assume, not only enjoyment and enrichment for the people, but I'm assuming it's well received by the people that are being helped. The people who are getting their houses built, or the food, they're very welcoming for the travelers?
Yeah, you've nailed it, Tay. Yeah, they are, and I think part of that comes from my approach right from the beginning has been never to go to a community and say, with any sort of agenda and say, this is what I think should be done here. It's always been to ask what their needs are. Well, firstly, to ask if they would welcome people from overseas. And then if the answer to that is yes, then to ask them what their needs are. And then it's up to us to promote it and get people on board to meet those needs.
Yeah. So that's good. Yeah. So it's very thought out. I think that's good. You're asking, are you guys willing for that? Because you don't want to shove, that down their throat. So I think that's good. And it makes the experience great on both sides of it. So, yeah. Eco luxury. That's another word I wrote down from your website. What exactly is eco luxury? And do you do some just vacations, like eco luxury vacations, or is everything that you do tied to some sort of humanitarian effort as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think people would certainly initially only come to us because of the humanitarian component to it. But we certainly do get some of our repeat clients will say, yeah, we love what you've done for us. Can you run just a regular vacation for us as well? And naturally, well, maybe not naturally, but yes, we do say yes to that.
Yeah. Logistical experts, right?
Yeah. And that they appreciate the service they get. So we're delighted to help them in any way. But coming back to your question around what is eco luxury, it's really looking at those hotels and lodges that take their sustainability commitment seriously, and it can take a variety of forms. But to give you an example of sort of the main things we look for are things like the design and construction of the hotel. Perhaps that they used recycled materials or reclaimed materials in the construction. Another aspect could be how they generate how they source their electricity. Do they generate it themselves, perhaps through solar, or even some use wind or even hydroelectricity to get their power. And then also looking at their employment practices around employing local people, and ideally at not only just sort of staff level, but also at management level. Do we see that happening? And then the big tick would be if there's community ownership of the property. Is, as I say, a big tick for us. And so it's looking at still at the high end of hotels, but right, overlaying that with sustainability practices.
Yeah. And it's eco luxury. I'm picturing something, but is it very off grid, or is it like you're going to a regular hotel that it's just they've built them and designed them with different practices?
Yeah, it can be both. Absolutely. Some eco luxury properties, you wouldn't know that what's going on behind the scenes, really. In terms of, for instance, the ownership structure or the percentage of people they employ, but then also it wouldn't necessarily be obvious that the materials that are used to construct it were sourced locally or were recycled. It wouldn't necessarily be so obvious.
Yeah. And for these types of places in, all over the world, remote places, are you kind of sourcing these, or do you get a lot of people coming to you because they know what you're doing and they want to be on your list? How does that work? How do you get these great places to visit?
Yeah, I mean, there's no one way. In terms of the accommodations, it's part of it is going out there and sourcing them. Being a attendee of experiential travel shows, quite often have the more remote hotels exhibiting. So that's one way of becoming aware. But then, as well, now that we're established, we certainly do get not only hotels coming to us, but we do get hotels, but also we get communities coming to us also and saying, how about working with us? And it's wonderful to get, once you get that level of recognition, it makes the job easier when people are pitching to you.
Yeah. Well, and I could see that too. I mean, you get a community coming to you and you're bringing commerce to them. That's kind of a humanitarian effort in and of itself. You're working with them, not just the clients coming, but you offering this as a possibility for their community, is, probably life-changing, I would assume, for a lot of these communities, bringing people in and just, jobs, money, everything that comes with that. So.
Sure. Yeah. It all helps.
Yeah. I did see a couple things. I believe it was on the web, or excuse me, on a YouTube video that you have linked to your website. I'm going to link that because I thought the video was really great. It was just a couple minutes long, but it really is gives you a great idea of what it is that you're doing. Some of the things that were in there, I wrote these down because I thought, wow, this is amazing. One of them really speaks to me, but swimming with whale sharks, private viewing of the Sistine Chapel was kind of one of the things listed in there. Helicopter flight to Mount Everest. And then the one that spoke to me more was learn to be a gladiator. And that sounds amazing. So I want you to maybe explain a little bit about what a trip looks like to where you can go and learn to be a gladiator.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's not as difficult as it seems. Actually, there is a gladiator training school in Rome.
Really?
And so obviously we'd love people to book through us, but you can just go there direct as well. So yeah, it's mostly for kids, but adults can also participate. And yeah, it's slightly well, I was going to say sort of tongue in cheek. It's you're not going to be a trained killer, but they
Correct. Yeah.
help you in the practices of it. But one thing that is more unique to us, which is not too different, is in Kenya, and it's actually an experience we offer, which is going out with Maasai warriors and actually going out firsthand and seeing how they still maintain traditional practices around hunting and and then survival in the wild as well. So that's something that's less Googleable. Is that
that speaks to me too. I think that would be,
it's amazing.
Yeah, that would be an amazing adventure. And a lot of these things that you offer, are you going out there and you're experiencing them, kind of checking them out and see? So kind of everything that you have to offer, you've also done yourself?
Yeah, it's been pretty tough. Tough life doing it all.
yeah, very tough, very tough. Would you say you have a favorite place that I mean, you've traveled all over the world. Is there a certain place that really speaks to you? And maybe if so, maybe why? Whether it's just maybe just a country or a region too, no, it doesn't have to be a specific village or something, but.
Yeah, there are so many. What sprung to mind was Bali in Indonesia, actually.
Yeah. Beautiful, huh?
Yeah, it is beautiful. It's beautiful. The people are amazing. The food incredible.
Yeah.
And there's so much to see, even if it's just purely vacation, from cooking classes to hikes to waterfalls through beautiful rice paddy fields to whitewater rafting to mountain biking, volcano hiking, surfing and snorkeling and diving as well. So it offers so much, and then the reason it really sort of edges out all these other incredible places, just in my mind, is because the project we offer there is it's unique in terms of our portfolio, because the benefit accrues to really just one person, but the impact that it makes in that person's life is so profound. So I'll explain. It's installing disabled accessible bathroom for a paraplegic, and the context is that Bali is a Hindu island, and in the Hindu culture, if you're born with a disability, it's considered bad karma, and so someone born as a paraplegic can be sort of hidden away from the rest of the world and lead very lonely, isolated lives. And so by bringing to them a bathroom, which then gives them a measure of, as I say, independence and dignity, is, as I say, really profound. And so it's a favorite of mine, and was really fortunate to the last trip I did there. Actually got to take my kids and wife, and we did it together, and that was really special. With the kids, they got involved with drawing water from the village well, and then carrying that water over to where the cement was being mixed, all by hand. And they got involved with the cement mixing of it, and then spading it into the wheelbarrows, and then taking the wheelbarrows over to where the experts were doing the tricky parts.
Right.
And then in their spare time, playing soccer with the local kids as well. So it was, that was a really an experience that I have done before and loved it when it was sort of just me, but I cherish it even more doing it with my family.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that's pretty interesting too. I could see how that would make a big difference. You're kind of ostracized. You got the bad juju because you were born a certain way, and yeah, making it more accessible. That is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned rice paddies. I've been looking. I like that painting behind you. Is that something that you acquired on one of your trips?
In fact, yes, from Bali. Yeah.
Okay, great.
From that trip I just mentioned, in fact, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when you go on, say somebody books a trip with you, or with your company, right? Hands Up Holidays. Are you the sizzle? Do you come with them? Are you part of like a guide, or are you completely disconnected and you have teams throughout the world that just handle all of that? Or are you kind of the face that shows up and walks them through these adventures?
No, I'm not. Really, our sort of philosophy is around, consistent with everything else, just trying to be local, and so we employ local guides to be the face. So yeah, I have only met a handful of our clients, and that's been when they've come to, well, where I am now, New Zealand, or when I was based in England, or I've visited some in the States as well. But on the like we had a family that traveled. They were traveling for a year actually, and we were really fortunate to handle part of that year. So we handled their trip in Australia, New Zealand, Cambodia, Laos, and Japan. And when they came to New Zealand, I was their tour guide for the day around here in Auckland, which was super special because it's not at all common for me to be able to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're, obviously everyone's having their own experience and you're not there for all of them, but have you had, you yourself, I would assume you have maybe like a really great impact story, either from yourself or something that one of your clients have shared that really maybe really made a difference in somebody's life by the work that they were doing on one of these trips. And, I don't know if you have something at the top of mind that you'd like to share with that.
Yeah, a couple of stories spring to mind from clients. One was a family that traveled with us to Morocco, and they were building a library at a school in sort of rural Morocco. And the trip went well, but it was a regular trip, awesome, but in itself unremarkable. Until I heard from the clients some months later. They said, this was sort of just after Christmas, and they said the kids told us that they didn't want their Christmas gifts. They wanted to actually send the gifts to the children that they were playing with at the school in Morocco. So that really touched me, and it's really thrilled to hear that. And then another story that springs to mind was a solo traveler, a woman who had recently retired and hadn't traveled much, certainly hadn't traveled to Africa before, but had decided to travel to Kenya with us. And so she, someone who I describe as a nervous traveler, and so required an extra level of hand holding, both before and during the trip. And again, there was additional, as I say, care and attention paid to her, and it went really well. But that was great until basically I heard from her more or less the next day after her trip saying, actually, I've booked pretty much the next flight back to Kenya, and I'm going on my own. And so she went there and she booked her own apartment and rented her own car, and she ended up spending the next 3 months volunteering at the children's center that she'd just spent a few days at. So to see her with this new lease of life really was incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, you're making everybody's life better on both sides of this, both sides of this thing. That's stepping outside of your box. Yeah, and I could see a lot of these adventures. It probably wouldn't go the other way. She probably wouldn't have ever jumped in and just done that herself, stuck around for 3 months and just go do it. But to kind of dip your toes in the water first, and then, this is what's possible, and then really move forward and start to step outside of your box that way. But a little help at the first time,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And with her specifically, you mentioned, she's a nervous traveler. I would imagine a lot of these places that you go, there are some things happening in the world, all the time. It sounds like you have the logistics and everything's broken down and everything, but is that part of what you do? You make a safe environment for people to go and be in these villages and everything.
Yeah, 100%. And that comes back to the point really around it still being a vacation for people. So the destinations we go to, for the most part, are exotic. We've touched on a few of them: Kenya, Bali, could be Costa Rica, Belize, wherever. They're exotic destinations, but they're not war-torn destinations. So it's not heading to Gaza or the Sudan or Ukraine or something like that.
Yeah. It probably sounds a little bit like, but when you get there and it's pretty it's pretty civilized around here.
Yeah. And I think as well, I think because they are vacation spots, this again comes back to whether the luxury component of the trips. Well, it isn't really a component because it runs throughout the whole trip, but it helps with people feeling more comfortable as well, because they're in environments in the hotels which they're accustomed to seeing in other parts of the United States or wherever.
And that's some of the places, Morocco, Kenya, they sound a little bit more out there, and it sounds to me anyway, I've never been to either one of those places, but I would expect to find people in need. Some of the other places I saw on your website, a lot like European countries, Italy, that's what sort of humanitarian, needs are there in a developed European country like Italy?
Yeah. Well, you nailed it earlier when you said that, there are needs in the US, and people can help at soup kitchens. In fact, that's really is what we're offering in Italy. With it only a slight twist, or I guess you could call it an Italian flair twist, in that it's these really they're called refettorios, and the whole idea is that they are technically soup kitchens. They're certainly serving the people in need, but they're done in a high-end way.
Gotcha.
And so it's a beautiful environment to be in. So that's where the Italian flair part kicks in. But still, the need is the same. and it's set up by a chef. His name's Massimo Bottura, and he's actually a Michelin star chef who, in addition to being passionate about food, his other passions are around eliminating food waste and caring for the homeless. And so he's the one who set up these refettorios in some of the cities in Italy, and so with him, he's a 3-star Michelin chef, so his standards are super high, and so they translate through to the refectorios as well. So it's a place of welcome and where everyone's treated with a lot of dignity at the soup kitchens. But in terms of what our guests do is they are involved with preparing the tables, preparing the meals, and serving the meals.
That's fantastic. What a great idea. Especially with the whole food waste, that you hear stories about that. There's certain laws and rules. I'm sure every state's a little different in the US, but these restaurants, they're sometimes, from what I've heard anyway, they're not allowed to give some of their food. It's like they have piles of food that they just throw in the garbage, and because of the food regulations, sometimes they're not allowed to share it out, which seems like a waste. But that guy, say his name one more time. I love to hear the Italian. The chef, Massimo
Bottura.
I like it. That's great.
Amazing guy.
Yeah. Well, Christopher, it's been fantastic talking to you. I really enjoyed learning about the business that you have going, and it seems like you're doing a lot of great work around the world, and you're allowing people to kind of come in and step in and have their own adventures and help people as well. And I have no doubt that really does put that little taste, a little spark to send them home and kind of carry on that tradition. I mean, I think that's really important for people to take care of people, not just your local community, but there's people in need all over the world. So I think that's a fantastic thing you're doing. And well, thank you for doing that. I appreciate you coming on the show. I want to be respectful of your time, but where would somebody start if they want to start to just take a peek and see what it is you have to offer? Is the website the best place for them to be?
Yeah, I would say so. We are on the socials, so you can look primarily Facebook and Instagram, either Hands Up Holidays or Impact Destinations, or go straight to the website. So handsupholidays.com, or there is a separate website for impactdestinations.com.
Okay. Yeah, I want to kind of follow along what you're doing, and I'm really interested in that, kind of that human trafficking aspect of it too. I think that's a very, very unique way for people to get involved with, the cause, and to see it up front. And, that can look a lot different in the United States than it can overseas. So that's very interesting. But I'll make sure that I'll put all the links in the show notes here. So anybody listening, they can go and visit your website and check it out, and get in touch with you and your team, and hopefully find their next, Hands Up holiday.
Amazing, Tay. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming on. It was great talking to you.
Pleasure's all mine.